Now we'll move on to our next speaker. I would like to introduce Dr. David Aldridge. Dr. David is a research scientist at SINTEF Ocean in Norway, where he works within the macroalgae group. His extensive expertise in seaweed research and cultivation is highly respected, and he has made a significant contribution to the field. Dr. David holds a degree in marine biology and a PhD in biological oceanography, algal physiology, both from the University of Southampton. His academic background has provided him with a solid foundation in marine science, which he has built upon throughout his career. Before joining SINTEF Ocean, Dr. David spent 6 years at Seaweed Solutions, a pioneering organization in European seaweed cultivation. During his time there, he was deeply involved in the cultivation of both sugar and winged kelp. His role encompassed a wide range of responsibilities, including overseeing hatchery and nursery operations from 2021 to 2023. Dr. David was instrumental in research and development aimed at optimizing seedling production and enhancing their growth and development at sea. His work at Seaweed Solutions was crucial in advancing the methodologies used in seaweed cultivation. In SINTEF Ocean, Dr. David continues to build upon the foundation focused on improving seaweed cultivation practices and addressing the various challenges faced by the industry. Dr. David's deep understanding of the seaweed cultivation, along with his practical experience and innovative approach, makes him an invaluable force in our discussions today. His presentation will be focused on disclosing the lessons learned from seaweed cultivation in Norway and will shed light on the future challenges and opportunities in this evolving field. Dr. David, please feel free to share your screen and start the presentation.
Much for that introduction. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Right, yeah. No, I think that the introduction was far more flattering than I remember the one I gave you. So thank you for adding those little extra details. But yep, and thank you very much for the invite. It's very nice to have the opportunity to speak to you. Let me see if I can. Is it better to share my entire screen, or is it better to try and share the presentation via the advanced method that I was shown in by Adel the other day?
You can use the either way, like the advanced also you can use just to have your link.
Should I try the advanced?
Yeah.
And then what was it? PowerPoint as background. Let me see if this looks. You see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, today I wanted to talk a little bit about seaweed cultivation in Norway. That's where I've been working for the last 7 years. But I'm originally from the UK. Some people say I've started to pick up a Norwegian accent, so yeah, I apologize if that's coming across at all. But yeah, with as Stefan was alluding to, there's a lot of mistakes go into cultivating seaweed. A lot of it expensive mistakes sometimes. So I thought maybe it'd be valuable to share some of those mistakes that have been made in the Norwegian industry, with the hope that other people can learn from them. And then I will talk a little about some of the current projects we have at SINTEF Ocean at the moment and what we are doing. The next slide. So these are the main species that we are looking at in Norway. I think, like most people in Europe, we are focused very much on Saccharina and Alaria. I think mainly due to the high biomass, and they're relatively easy for people to cultivate, especially new farmers. And that's, I think, all of the commercial cultivation is focused on these two species. But there is considerable interest in some new species, especially Ulva and Palmaria. But to my knowledge, there are no companies currently producing this on commercial scale. It is very much just R&D focused right now. And there's been some small amount of work on porphyra in the past, but no current projects to my knowledge. So yeah, As I said, I'm not from Norway, but every time I see a map of the Norwegian coastline, I'm struck by the size of it. I sort of forget how far north and round the top of Scandinavia it goes. And it's not just long, it has a lot of the fjords and inlets and tens of thousands of islands. So when you add all of that coastline up, it apparently is the second largest coastline in the world. So in terms of space and climate, it is very suitable for seaweed cultivation, and it's also home to home to Europe's largest kelp forests. And when we talk about the seaweed industry, we shouldn't forget that Norway has a very long history of not cultivating seaweed, but harvesting seaweed for alginate production. And I think that has been going on since the 1950s. So every year they're harvesting hundreds of thousands of tons from natural kelp bed for that industry. So it's not surprising, perhaps, that Norway was one of the first countries in Europe, perhaps, to start up with kelp cultivation, and it's home to some of the pioneers of the European seaweed industry, Seaweed Solutions, Ocean Rainforest, among many others, and every year that number is getting greater. Okay. And Norway has a large expertise in aquaculture. So I just try to move myself around the screen to get myself out the way. Maybe that's not so easy. Anyway, but salmon farming, maybe it provides some hope to the Norwegian seaweed industry, because 40, 50 years ago, I'm told salmon farming was very low tech and not a profitable industry. Whereas now it's as the Norwegian salmon industry is the largest salmon industry in the world. It's producing millions of tons every year. And I think tomorrow Netflix are launching a sort of what is being dubbed the Succession, but with salmon farmers, is coming out tomorrow, focusing on the Norwegian salmon industry. So it's a very profitable industry. I think in Norway it's only second to the oil production in terms of tax revenue it's providing to Norway. So this provides hope, but it also shows the potential for aquaculture in Norway. The population is used to the concept of aquaculture. They're used to having it as part of their culture, and they're used to it being by the coast. Yeah. But despite these good signs, the Norwegian seaweed cultivation industry is struggling, similar to a lot of the industry across Europe right now. So I was recently at the Seagriculture conference in the Faroe Islands, and one of the speakers was talking about the innovation valley of death and how this is common to new industries, and asking the question of whether seaweed cultivation is also in this currently in this stage. So, we're in a stage where public funding and grants are starting to dry up, and we need to now enter the phase where private funding is taking over and turning this into a profitable industry. You see this a little bit in the trend of the total sales of cultivated kelp in Norway. This is from the Norwegian Fisheries Institute. And you see that from 2015 to the sort of early 2020s, the amount of sales was increasing quite rapidly. And then the last few years, this has been decreasing. And I think there are probably a few reasons for this. I'm just going to discuss a few. I'm sure there are many more. I'd be interested if anyone has any feedback on the end of anything else that might have been a factor. So the first thing that has perhaps led to this is the rise in interest rates over the last few years. So first and foremost, this has been putting off investors from investing in seaweed companies, because when they can get high interest rates from just putting their money in the bank, they're much less likely to take on risky investments in new sustainable industries. And we also saw at Seaweed Solutions this was affecting, customer orders. potential large customers, large food producers, they're much less likely to take on risks in developing new innovative products in times of high interest rates and financial hardship. Then they're just doubling down on what they know and what they know sells. Another common theme seems to be this chicken and egg situation between large market opportunities and seaweed farmers. So I've been to a number of seaweed conferences now where people have stood in front of the audience from larger food producers, for example, and they say they are willing to take thousands of tons of seaweed biomass, but they need to have a reliable supply year in, year out, and the quality needs to be consistent. And they're also generally, these large food producers are asking for a lower price. They see seaweed very much as a commodity. Despite making these promises, they're, as far as I know, they are unwilling to sort of sign contracts with the seaweed producers to guarantee that if they are producing this tonnage, which would be very expensive to do, that they will actually take it. So there is kind of a standoff here that needs to be solved. Yeah, the whole value chain is still very labor intensive. I think in Europe, we often talk about, how our industry is going to be different from the established industries in Asia. We say we're going to have better technology and all these things. But from what I've seen, it's Asia that actually currently has the more automated processes. And yeah, I can speak from experience that the whole, especially the sea operations and the processing stage, they're still very manual, and the scales are still much lower than they need to be harvesting and processing hundreds and thousands of tons per year. And then this is a little bit what Stefan alluded to. Many farmers are sort of putting the horse before the cart. They're producing the biomass, thinking that it's going to be easy to sell, where actually, people need to start by thinking, how am I going to sell this biomass, into what market? How do I need to process it? Do I need to dry it, freeze it, blanch it, ferment it, acid preserve it? Does it have to be cut, not cut? And, what are the quality requirements? So with a lot of the new seaweed farmers, it seems to be something that they are not always thinking about in the first years of cultivation. So at SINTEF, we sort of are focusing on a few areas to help the industrialization of the industry by 2030. I guess in summary, we are kind of focused on improving the yields and trying to solve some of the technological problems across the value chain. But all the time, we have to remember to think about the market. The market should come first, and that should inform, what we are producing, what species, how we're producing it, how we process it. So at SINTEF Ocean, we are currently 8 people. We just hired 2 new people, so we're soon going to be 10. But we are just focused, our team is focused on macroalgae. We are mostly seaweed biologists, but we have some colleagues working also on ocean modeling and modeling of seaweed growth. And also we have some engineers working on technological solutions to some of the problems. We're also together with the local, I'll just move my head that way, local university, NTNU, and funded by the Norwegian Research Council. We are founding members of the Norwegian Seaweed Center, which is a national infrastructure for doing research into seaweed cultivation. So we have 3 farm sites. We have a coastal farm, we have an offshore exposed site, we have an IMTA farm in the north of Norway, and we have land-based facilities, hatcheries, and also automation and robotics labs. And this infrastructure is covering the whole value chain from the land farm through to sea modeling and simulation of growth at sea. And then we have colleagues in other departments at SINTEF working more on the sea operation side of things and the processing, storage, and development of products. Okay, so here's a selection of some of our current projects that we're working on. We have a project called GP Seaweed, which stands for Green Platform Seaweed. This is a very well-funded project from Innovation Norway and the Norwegian Research Council with several industrial partners looking into new products from cultivated seaweed. So we're looking at food, functional ingredients, also packaging materials with partners like Buzeos, who were mentioned previously. And we're also looking at potential new products such as biochar for soil improvement and carbon storage. We have another project called Aurora IMTA. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, Norway has a lot of salmon farming activity. So we're seeing if seaweed can bring some benefits to the salmon industry. One of the current problems with the salmon industry is they make too much money. They're not interested in changing their business model. But we have one partner in the north where we have this project where we have designed what we think is one of the world's first purpose-designed rigs for co-cultivation of salmon and seaweed. So we have the seaweed grown in the middle of the structure with salmon around the edges, and we're looking in both directions if the salmon, if the effluent is having positive effect on the seaweed growth, but also if the seaweed has some health benefits for the salmon, maybe through increased oxygen production. So if we can demonstrate those benefits, also perhaps demonstrate reduced environmental impact of the salmon farming, which is becoming an interest in a hot topic in Norway, then perhaps it will encourage the salmon farmers to consider integrating seaweed into future design of salmon facilities. We also have this offshore farm that was built at the end of last year. That is the home to this large industry project called Seaweed Carbon Solutions, where we're looking to develop scalable technology for exposed open ocean cultivation. You can see from this model of the coast of Norway that we have reason to believe that if we move slightly offshore, we can improve the yields of the seaweed grown. But those farms are going to have larger costs and they're going to be more complicated to run. But we're doing some of the initial work to try and see if the cost benefit of building these offshore farms, and also looking at the potential role they might have in CO2 sequestration. Interesting that Stefan mentioned 10 kilos per meter as being a key kind of threshold in becoming carbon negative, because the early results from our LCA models are suggesting something similar. We're also working a little bit on ulva. So we have had some projects in the past on ulva, but there is increasing interest in ulva, especially in Scandinavia. Last week, we had the first meeting of an ulva workshop collaboration between Norway, Sweden, and Denmark to try and share knowledge on ulva cultivation, share bottlenecks and problems with the aim of applying for joint projects and building knowledge within these countries. So Sweden is probably the furthest ahead in Europe in terms of ulva cultivation, at least in Scandinavia, with Nordic Sea Farm cultivating it at sea. But also Christopher, I think, will be talking next a little bit about land cultivation. So we have established stock cultures for future projects, and we're interested in projects related to both land and sea cultivation. And then another newly funded project is a project called Direct. This is funded by the Norwegian Fisheries Ministry. We're focusing on trying to optimize some of the aspects of direct seeding together with some industry partners, focused on Saccharina latissima. So, this method offers potential to improve the efficiency of seedling production, but it still has some unpredictabilities that need to be solved before it becomes a widespread, large-scale seeding method. So we're looking into some of these issues. So that's all I had, but thank you very much for attention. If you want to talk further, you can contact me, or you can contact my the